That's fine.
Just something that popped up that's saying it's being live streamed. Just click the blue button.
Yep.
And it looks like we've popped up now, so I'm gonna hit record. And then
I'm sorry, all of a sudden, things disappeared. Okay, Casey, are we set to go?
right, we are now recording and we are streaming, so you can call it to order at any moment.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Seagull Board of Directors meeting for March 25th, 2022. My name is Nancy Abelman. I am your board president. We have all board members present, and I will ask that they introduce themselves and say what their positions are. Michael, it seems like you're next on the screen when I'm looking at this, so maybe you could start.
Okay, I'm Mike Crosby. I'm the treasurer.
I'm Tommy Lipe. I'm secretary.
Who's next on the screen, Nancy?
Actually, you were in between, so Chris, if you could please go ahead.
Chris Pettit. I think I'm vice president this year.
You are. You have that distinction. And Patty?
Patty Goldberg, a member at large.
Okay, okay. Also at the meeting, we have our Seagull manager and some CCMS folks. So if you will all introduce yourselves, we'll have you do that before we get going.
I'm Jessica, the manager at Seagull.
Stacey Patterson, CCMS.
Sandy Gardner with CCMS.
Chuck Crawford, CCMS.
Okay, I think we're set to go. If all of you have the agenda in front of you, and I believe any of the owners on this call have the agenda, we'll go to the first item, which is the reading and approval of the minutes from the January 21st, 2022 board meeting. We will not read through them. I will just ask if anyone has any changes to these, to the meeting minutes. No one? Okay, I would make a motion then we approve these, or I would request a motion that we approve these minutes as they stand.
So moved.
Chris seconds.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded that we approve the January 21st, 2022 minutes. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. And these are the financial reports, and CCMS will present these.
All right, this is Chuck. I'll start on page 10 of 89, which is kind of the summary page of all the bank accounts. And this is as of February 28, 2022. We're 5 months into our budget year. Real quick, the detailed financial statements that we always prepare, those are on pages 63 through 70. And so what we're going through is a kind of a slide presentation summary of the financial snapshot. And so on page 10, we've got a list there of 6 bank accounts. You have your operations account, your COA operations account, and you have just over 144K through February. The insurance reserve account for insurance renewals, you'll see that as of February is just over 153,000. We've got 2 bank accounts for the dedicated reserve, one at Prosperity and one at Community. And if you add those 2 together, we have in there as of February just over 563,000. And then what we have in the Hurricane Harvey bank account, and there's 2 balances there. You'll see one for just over 127,000, and then the other one we call for the business income, just over 242. You take those 2 together, it's just over 369,000. So all COA HOA, COA related accounts are just over 1.2 million. The next three accounts listed below are for the resort. You have an operations account, a resort money fund account, and then you also have a resort reserve money fund account. And all three of those total, as of February, just over $853,000. So if you take all accounts as of February, we have just over $2 million in those accounts. The next slide that we show is on page 11, and this is just the allocation breakdown for your monthly assessments. Everybody, all 105 owners get their monthly assessments. It's broken down into three parts. You have your operational portion, which represents about 43% of the monthly assessment. You have your reserve, which represents around 27% of the monthly, and then your insurance reserve, which is 30%. So like on $100, I'd like to break it down. So just for every $100 to operations, you have $43 that go to it, $27 to the reserve, and $30 to your insurance reserve. The next slide, page 12, is just showing a projection of our budgets and our income. And so from the month of October through February, the blue line is what we budgeted income to be, and you'll see that's just over $335,000. And then our actual income for the 5 months is just over $344,000, so a variance of about $9,000, which is good. We put some notes down below. We did receive an electric sales refund, the association did, and the total of that was just over $16,829. A portion of that, which was just over $9,000, went to the owners, and the variance of about $7,000 stayed, for operation commercial meters, and so that's always a good thing. The next slide, 13 of 89, is the expenses, and the blue line's budgeted, which is just that we have that budgeted for the 5 months, just over $342,000. And our actual is just over $369,000. So the variance there is a negative $27,000. You look at the expense items, income and expense items for the first 5 months. Most of them right in line. One of the major variances you'll see is the fire alarm system, and we'll go over that a little bit as we move forward. We know that our fire system is currently operational, and we're doing everything we can to maintain it. And again, we'll go over that in a little bit more detail later in the agenda. The next one, 14 of 89, just shows the variances of those two, of the income page and the expense page. And you'll see that we budgeted to be in the red for the first 5 months, about $6,400, and you can see we're actually in the red about $25,000. Again, as mentioned, and then down below you'll see notes, distribution owners, electric, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, just over $9,400. And then some of the bigger items that we've had to deal with, some maintenance repairs and general maintenance in reference to pool equipment. We've had to do some hot tub motors, blowers, et cetera, to maintain. So we've incurred some of that cost this year. But all in all, from a cash position, we're fine. I mean, we're working good, and hopefully not any unforeseen things the next 7 months. I think we're going to be okay in line with the budget. Get into the next page, slide, of 15 of 89, and this is the dedicated reserve account. And you can see as of February, we mentioned we had just under $600,000 there, and then you'll see where we're projected to be come September. And you can see that's around $838,000. Down below, we list some of the expenses that have occurred for the first 5 months. That's in the lower right, starting with Jaco Roofing, and then down below to the Atrium project. Then what the team put together on the lower right-hand side is your remaining contract amount. So those are expenses that we have coming once we finish the contracted agreements. And all those total just over $225,000. So if all those fall through and we get those all done by the end of September, you would take that $838,000 less that $225,000, and we have in there estimated just over $613,000. So providing an update there. If we go to page 16 of 89, this is the one, your insurance reserve account, and as of February, we have just over $153,000. And our renewal comes up October 31st, 11/1. So we show the dots moving forward all the way through August, and then you'll see there's a slight bump that it bumps up there in September and October. And what that is there was a couple of premiums we had to finance this year. And so with that said, you'll see that increase happens. Your guys are putting in just over $41,000 a month, just under 500, right at 500, $500,000 a year. And you can see that our projection right now is that by the October, if nothing changes and it rolls the way we hope it does, estimated funds at that time should be just around 424. And then we show the dots of where they came in prior year, and if there's an increase, and we have that factored in. Just to update everybody, back in December of 2021, we had reached out to Marsh to do a flood zone reclassification, and they are currently working on that. And so with that said, if that could fall through, that would be great. We're looking at, it's the flood classification of the Seagull. Our neighbors next door have a different classification, and so as comparable in flood premium renewals last year, Seagulls was around just over 170K. Next door, it was significantly less. So we're hopeful that by this next renewal come November, we can get a reclassification of the Seagull. If that happens, that should help a lot. With that said, then we get into 17, which is the cover page heading into the resort, and we get into page 18. And so we'll go to the resort snapshot. And these are the percentages breakdowns of left-hand side short-term rentals and long-term rentals of what. So an example on the left-hand side, let's take $100. So for every $100 received for the Seagull, the green represents the owner's portion, so they would get $61. The yellow represents management, which is 7%, so that'd be $7. And then for operational expenses, to cover costs for operating expenses, is at 32, and that'd be about $32 for every 100. And then over on the right-hand side, long term. And then, of course, there was an adjustment this year. We were able to increase the distribution to owners by 1%. And so that's great news as we move on through the report. Page 19 of 89, income. And we budgeted income for the first 5 months. You can see just at $1 million. And it's actually come in at 1.1. So good news there. We go to the expense side, and that's page 20 of 89. We budgeted our expenses to be at 1.1 million, and they come in at about 1.2, so a variance there of about 91K. Then the next slide would be the variance between the two, and that's page 21 of 89. So we budgeted to be in the red at this time, 160K, and you'll see that we're actually in the red 149. So in the first 5 months, operating had a projection. In the packet, you guys later on, Danny had updated it for us. We put in there on pages 71 to 72 the 12-month breakdown, and so you guys can see how this works month to month. It is common for us to be operating in the red at this time, but as we get closer to the Memorial Weekend, May, June, July, August, and September, that's where we gain a lot of momentum and get the numbers in the black. Just my notes here, no slide. ADs as of March. I looked at March a year ago, March 31st of 2021. ADs at that time were around 439K. As of last night, the Seagull had ADs of about 487, so up about 11% right now, so that's good. You look at the detailed financial information compared to a year ago, the Seagull between October and February had just over $746,000 in rents. As of the financial report through February of 2022, it's just over $1,037,000, so up about 38%. So that's great. You get into March of 2021, the Seagull did just over $298,000. As of last night, we were at 270, so we were off the mark a little bit there. Looking at April, April of 2021, we did 284. Last night, we're around 212. We watch this weekly, and if you look at it, and Casey will go into it a little bit more in depth as we go on to the other slides. You know, October through February a year ago and this year, just record months for us. And now we're getting into March. It's a little lighter. Spring break this year was all last week pretty much. A year ago, we had 2 weeks of that, so that plays a little bit of an impact there. But with that said, spoke to some good friends of mine that are competitors on the island, and their October through February was not near as good as what ours were, so that's a good thing. So we're, you know, very optimistic of what's going on. I'm hopeful that where we're located and all that, that we're going to be okay. And again, we watch it weekly, and I know you guys, national news, wars going on, gas prices. Little history here, you know, Texas being a driving destination. We've faced this before, and being a driving destination and being in Texas really does not impact us much. And the early reports right now that I've got to watch in the news in the morning is that people are going to travel this year and they're going to vacation more. So I don't foresee us, you know, as long as the weather's good and we have that weather's good, I think we're going to be on course for another record year. Oh, I got it. Casey, if you want to lead in.
All right, so on page 22, what this shows, and we've kept this in the packets for the last 2 years. So the green mark are the rentals of the current year by month, the gross rents, and then you'll see this red line. And this red line is the same year that we're talking about, but where we were January 21st. And so this shaded area are the growth and the bookings and rents that have taken place in the past 2 months. And so that's where you'll see since February there, where February increased a little bit, but then you'll see where March it increased, and then April. So those are those bookings that are coming in. So we've gained a lot of ground in those 2 months, and we'll continue to see it increase. So jumping on to the next slide, these are going to look different. These are a bit newer, and on the screen it's a little hard to see, I'm sorry. And then as I was going through, I look at this a lot. This information is actually from Beyond Pricing. They had connected your account previously, and so I ran information from your account. And looking at this a lot, but going through this morning, trying to go real slowly, I noticed that my notes have the colors changed. So we'll look at the key here on the left-hand side. So the pink is the current year occupancy for the market. And that's properties and available vacation rentals in this area on kind of an average basis. And then the green is where the month ended last year. So looking down below, this is kind of more targeted toward Seagull. So you'll see the this year pink with the market and the this year Seagull, you'll see that you're higher right now in these months than the market is projecting. Than the rest of the market is pacing, that's what I should say. So then kind of looking down here, you'll see this is again, just the market. The dashed lines are just the market. The green line is where last year ended. The pink line is where this year is pacing, and then I think it's purple line, that is where the year was last year at this same time. So it looks like the market as of right now is pacing a little behind, at least for April, May, and June, than it was the same time last year.
Casey,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question for you. Where does the Port A market information come from? Is it just units that you manage, or is this the broader market?
No, it's a broader market. What this site does is it scrapes data from like VRBO and Airbnb on an hourly basis.
Okay.
And so it scrapes that information and it records it. And so it has assumptions built in. So when it looks at say a 2-bedroom vacation rental and it's set at $300 a night and it's available, and then it shows that it's taken off, it assumes that it booked at that $300 a night. But anyways, this on the occupancy, it's scraping information off of VRBO and VRBO and Airbnb. And so looking at kind of the,
I mean, just
Mhm.
input of what I know you had a call with
Right.
Beyond Pricing, and
Mhm.
so, because I just want to share this, because I was listening in on it, and we were talking about, we look at this every Monday, and we get a good feel of what's going on the island. And we were looking at our numbers and vice versa, and they looking at their pricing, and we could tell there was something changing or
Mhm.
different. And then, so long story short, Casey called them, and the guys looked into it, and sure enough, the next day, they made a big change.
Yeah, they started making adjustments throughout that week, and we see them continually making adjustments, and so, because the market seems to be changing. But you'll see here that this is kind of more targeted to just Seagull's information that it's pulling from your Streamline software. So kind of where last year ended up, and then the pink is this year, and then the purple is where Seagull was the same time last year. So you'll see it's right now as far as for April's kind of in line, but then May, June, and July are pacing a little ahead where you were the same time last year. So here's some new information. I take it all with a grain of salt because it's based on, this is just kind of based on occupancy, and you've got owner usage and blocks and things like that factor into it. But it helps from a high level input to kind of look at things and kind of more understand and make sure that, you know, are you in line or are you way off, you know, way out of line with the market? So that's all I have.
Let me ask one question. Has the change in our cancellation policies that seem to have had any effect, negative or positive? Any?
I'm glad you brought that up. Sorry, I lost the screen with everybody, but I'm glad you brought that up because I've been looking and it doesn't appear so. Kind of looking at how you are pacing compared to the kind of the same time last year and current now versus Sandpiper and others, it doesn't appear that it's had any negative effect. Since you brought up cancellation policies, I will say that it was discussed at another association. We had a few owners. The same process, there were a couple of cancellations that really affected some owners. They asked the board to look into the cancellation policy. We shared all the same information that we shared with the Seagull, and actually through discussion, they liked and they chose to adjust their policy exactly in line with what Seagull did.
That's what we were hoping for.
That's good.
We could be the forerunners and then others would follow. Yeah, and ours is not real prohibitive. I don't believe, for folks that are listening here. We put this in place, but it's not as stringent as many are on the island, but it does insulate folks a little from the loss of revenue, and that's what we're hoping for.
That took place last week, and I wanted to find a good time to share it with you. So thank you, Tommy, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, so have we concluded with the financial information? Chuck, Casey?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, I believe so. And then the owners, and, you know, we have the aging and past due, and you guys, all owners are doing well.
We're all current.
We're all current, so.
Great, that's
Yes,
wonderful
ma'am.
news. Wonderful news. Do any of the board members have any questions before we move on?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then we can proceed with the management report. I think Jessica has a lot of information to share with us. So you have the floor, Jessica.
Got it. Thank you. Yes, there is a lot going on, even though it's mid-March. You know, we've moved through spring break. We're at the end of that. And, you know, like as Chuck and Casey indicated, we're expecting a very successful, busy summer. So, you know, moving into that, we constantly are thinking about staffing. And that is more than likely, you know, it's always one of the bigger challenges that we have, especially now. In the last several months, or since the last board meeting, we've lost a person in each category. So So we've lost one person at the front desk, one person in maintenance, and one in housekeeping. At this time, the only hires that we've done or new people that we've gotten is an assistant housekeeping supervisor. That's Roger. And then we've hired an extra housekeeping person. But we still have ads out. We're constantly on the lookout for those right people to add to the team. So we'll keep working with that. Front desk is, as well staffed as they're going to get. You basically have to have 5 people to man a 24-hour, 365 front desk, and that's what we have, plus supervisor. They've all been doing really well at cross-training on their shifts, learning different tasks, so I applaud them. Maintenance is doing well. They're plugging through their normal preventative maintenance items every month. Already thinking about summer and, just trying to get ahead of the game, knowing that we're a person short. And then housekeeping, Joy's doing a great job, working with all of them, retraining in certain areas, and, doing constant meetings where everybody has reminders of things to look for, so we're producing the best cleans that we can give the guests. So.
Yeah, and just to share a comment, I know, always going on 5 years, but pretty hard to be, we're in a unique area. It's tough. Finding people. And at Seagull, we've got it, like she said, a man, woman down in every position. We are running ads all over, and we're doing everything, all resources. Here on the island, it's a bloodbath. Everybody's trying to take everybody's people to try to get through the process, because business is doing well, and it's just not enough people to find. Then you're dealing with gas prices and everything else. We are a drive for people to come out to the property. So I know there's been a committee put together to help us with that, and Mr. Crosby and Patty, and I appreciate all y'all's help, because it's a challenge, and we're trying to, handle the process the best we can. And I know you guys as a board and an ownership, you provide us all the resources to be successful, and we're just want y'all to know we are going to do everything we can to staff the place accordingly with as qualified people as we can find.
Yeah, like Chuck said, thank you to the HR committee. I know y'all have been doing your best at looking at possibly increasing benefits, just things that will help attain and retain staff. So moving forward, a lot of stuff going on property. One of the major things that just got approved, we've been thinking about this for quite a while, post-Harvey, and even before that, the parking lot has needed some maintenance and repairs. We went out and researched several bids, and the board ended up approving a proposal from TexMix in the amount of $120,121.19. That's basically to encompass everything that parking lot needs. The asphalt repairs, we've got some potholes out there. There's some curbs that need some attention, painted, and then of course ADA area there at the front of the building. A couple years ago, basically it got tagged for some deficiencies, and so those vacations are needing to be in compliance, and so that is part of this project also. The first phase of that is due to begin April 4th. So.
And just to share, TexMix just did the parking lot repairs and over at the Sandcastle for us, and they did a good job. There were some issues with when some of the foundation was laid down and vice versa, and those guys, nobody had to go fix anything. They came out, they looked at it, didn't like what was being done, and they addressed it accordingly. So hopefully that's what was our last experience with them. So hopefully during this one, we'll get a good result also.
They showed up on time, they finished on time, they communicated.
Yeah, their communication has been very good, so.
Just a note, Jessica, just one note that I'd like to make about that. If folks have listened at previous board meetings and are aware that we did have some earlier proposals for this that were for much less money, but the whole environment has changed everywhere, and certainly in the coastal area. And those bids they would no longer honor. And so we did need to go out and get other bids. And this was not the only bid that we did get. We got another one that was very close to this, but thanks to Tommy, he had a contact and they came out, and Jessica spent a lot of time comparing the two bids. This one ended up being the best for us, had the components that we needed, but there was a lot of shopping around, and I think we're very confident that pricing wise and the work that will be done is the best that we could get. So.
Yep, another part of that we had early on in the project looked at was adding EV charging stations. We basically split that off as a separate project for right now. There was some debate about where to place those or what could be done. We did hire a survey company that came out and basically looked at where we could put these charging stations. The other part of it is the electrical make ready behind that. And here on the screen, that line right there represents the property line. The original thought was to put those EV charging stations right there. We technically could do that in a parallel fashion. But right now, I believe the consensus of the board is to kind of pause on that and wait it out until we've got some of these other large projects completed. This isn't a highly demanded item by owners or guests. Occasionally have somebody come through and ask, but as of right now, we're going to put this on just for a little while, just to get through some of these other large items.
I think it's important to say, though, that the project, we have approved looking at this and getting bids for it. So it will be put on the back burner until we get some other things done, but it definitely is something we're going to continue to look at and move forward with it when the time is right.
Right. So we'll keep that in the lineup. But other than that, the next item is the tennis court fence. We've been looking at that for a while, and obviously it's got some issues. It's had quite a bit of coastal wear and tear on it, where the salt air has gotten to it, and it is corroding. I recently touched base with DNC and Industrial Fence Group. I've gotten bids back from both of those. However, I do have some additional questions in regards to warranty, how long the product may take to get in. They're both proposing two types of fencing. One would be galvanized, like this. That's what was installed, I believe, in 2012 or 2014. Another option is vinyl coated, and that's one that should have a longer life. But like I said, I've got to get some more details on that, and as soon as I've got that, I will get that out to the board for y'all's decision. Next thing, hopefully we can cross this one off real soon. We've got the atrium planter repair. That's been in the lineup for a while. We originally started this project because there were leaks into the ground floor because of this area. So we had Baldwin Roofing come in, complete waterproofing roofing material in that area. There's some flashing there that also helps protect, that area and the lower floors. We've gone through and added some river rock, some planters, and some foliage. In talking with some of the members of the board, those maybe a little bit of a temporary look. A little bit further down, we're looking at a full landscaping revisit. So we're going to do the best that we can here, keep this area looking fresh and clean. You know, from the lobby area, we can take down some of that film and just have a better view into that area. So, but we'll look at
Jessica, Jessica, I'm glad that you added the note about the professional design, and I agree with you. We had to put something in there, and this is a highly visible area, and we needed to do something to make it look more complete. But we also know that this full area has had professional design work, and to complete this area in that manner, I think would be very wise, especially in light of the fact that we are moving forward with the potential marketing of this meeting room area. So this atrium area then will be even more crucial as to the look of it. So yes, I would agree it's important to move forward with professional design.
Right. All right, and then the next thing I wanted to review, board had asked that we look into the trash and linen doors. There on the left-hand lower side of the screen is pictures of what they currently look like. Those are the doors that are located on the very south end tunnel, or I'm sorry, stairwells, and the north end stairwells. Those are the trash chutes. And then in the middle of the building, there's linen chutes for housekeeping. They've been in the building as long as the building's been there, so they have some wear and tear on them. The doors themselves, the exterior are not in such bad condition. It's the functionality and the look, I mean, the inside of them is starting to rust. So we went out and researched a couple options. One of those was a material-only option. It's the same company that it would have provided, or I'm sorry, the doors are a Wilkinson high-rise brand. Grease and Beck basically can order those. It's the same door that was originally put in the building. They've lasted 40 years. Very high-end stainless steel. And so along with that, they would only do material. So we had to go chase down a masonry company to demo and install. The board asked me to look a little bit further into that to make sure that there's a more economical way to install. But in the meantime, they wanted to lock in that pricing for the material. So we've ordered those through Grease and Beck in the amount of $15,917.08. Other than that, there's an engineer who will also be on site when those are demoed and installed. He can inspect and provide WPIA certification. I locked up. No. Okay. My screen froze. So, other than that, one of the bigger ticket items that we've gotten completed back in October, the board approved parking lot poles and there were 10 of those out in the parking area. Several of them had failed, were showing signs of corrosion. The poles were unstable. So FSG came out mid-February and installed all 10 of those. They are complete, so, you know, the lead time on it, quite a bit longer than we expected. Kind of typical for the times, but they are done, and they're looking very good. So on the top, and there's a picture right there of what those look like, and the lighting. As we just mentioned, a total landscape redesign. The board's asked management to look into several companies that can help come in and look at these areas. Some of the beds, some plants that we can put in that will make it more attractive. We need it, of course, to be fairly maintenance-free, disease and insect resistant, and of course, flexible. We get really hot in the summer, and then, you know, occasionally, like a few weeks ago, we almost hit freeze temperatures. So it has to have a lot of variable, you know, stuff there. So actually, I've gotten a hold of a local company, Padre Landscape. We'll be reaching back out to a couple of those other landscaping companies that other CCMS properties have used and see which one can come up with a design for us for the whole property. So this is a project I think we can get moving on fairly quickly. The pool bathrooms need a little bit of a facelift. Okay, a lot of a facelift. So went out and obtained some pricing just to get a general sense of what the total cost would be. I can get details of this out to the board. There's a couple different options on flooring, and those range from $2,800 to $3,800. Those bathroom partitions right there, the wooden ones, those would be removed, and then either a solid plastic or a phenolic type material could go in. That's going to be a lot more resistant to the humid environment that is in. It's not an air-conditioned area, so it tends to stay pretty wet in there, but it'd be very easy to clean also. We're jumping into looking at lighting and then some of the plumbing fixtures that can be replaced also. So here very shortly, I put together a full package on that and send that out to the board to see which direction we want to move on it.
Jessica, a question for you. We know we're coming into a really busy season and those bathrooms will be used continually. Is there any possibility that there could be movement on that this spring so we could get these done before summer?
Yes, absolutely. Both of the flooring companies that I've contacted, they're open and available to start more than likely in the next couple weeks. Depending on which company that we go for the restroom partitions, those also anywhere from like a 7 to 14-day window on delivery for those.
We probably want to do those first before we do the flooring.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, depending on how they're mounted, that's what we're looking at. Does it need to be ceiling mounted, floor mounted?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it's probably not going to mount the same as your other. That's why we're thinking that first, and then. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that would be good to try to shoot for.
Yeah, that one will be one we'll move forward with first.
Right.
This is one that I brought to y'all's attention, I believe, at the last board meeting. The actual surface of the bridge are good. The railing going across is a little unstable. Maintenance are doing the best that they can to maintain that and keep it as secure as possible. We just need somebody to come in and look at redoing that. So I know one of the bigger projects involves, of course, with the mock-up, the stainless rails. Tommy, I'm more than likely going to get with you on this to see if we want to go back with wood, if there's other options that we should be looking at to possibly coordinate with the rest of the property if we're moving forward with other projects. So just want to make everything look as continuous or, give that the continuity that it needs across the board, not have it like pieced together looking. So.
Good.
This is a fun one. We actually recently had to redo, so we have a circle on that exterior, or I'm sorry, the highway sign. That little blue piece right there, we have to redo fairly often. It's basically a piece of wood that we paint, and then put up there with some flashing. So for the meantime, we've actually just recently redone that to give it a little bit of a fresher look. In the meantime, Siegel and Sandpiper basically share the maintenance and of all that area out there. In looking at this, I think it was about a year ago, the manager and I next door were looking at some signage, gotten together with several local companies. So this has been, as on the forefront for both Siegel and Sandpiper. There's some that we can do and some that we can't do, in the way of zoning and, height and depth and how far a road, those type of things. So we do have some restrictions in that regard, but some of those sign groups and companies are very well aware of those restrictions that we have to abide by. And so early next week, Sandpiper's manager, and I'm going to try to be there also, we'll have a meeting with Iconic Signs again to have that look. We're going to basically revisit it and see what other designs they may have to offer, a good, best option, and what we can do and what those costs would be.
Like Jessica mentioned, Jonathan, it's scheduled for Tuesday, so we'll be out there to meet with them. Just my vague memory of the process is that, to your point, being in the city and the codes, we just did Mustang Towers sign, and it was Iconic that I believe did that one. And so there was some, when it was installed, had to be moved back a little bit. There was some adjustments there, but long story short, they're familiar with the process, so that'll help us. And then of course we've got that land that's in between Sandpiper and Siegel, and then you got that land that's right there as you make a dogleg turn to go to Sandpiper. So, I'm sure there's some sort of easement agreement signage thing that goes with those two entities, but right now we just need to move forward with our concept that we've had in place for years and go through that and do it in a way that it doesn't offend anybody with the city. And of course, we all know how much fun it is to do that, but we will definitely keep you guys updated. I know both entities, you guys and Sandpiper, are very interested on modernizing and doing it first class. So that's the main thing.
And then when we get pricing and we discuss it, both you and Sandpiper both have Marsh, and so we had talked to Marsh about how we ensure this. And at that point, one of the entities would have to own the sign and would have to insure it on their policy, and then there would have to be some reimbursement. So that process will have to take place down the road.
All right, next thing up, so Playscape. Several years ago, this was an item that was graciously donated by a board member, Chris, thank you. And of course, we know that it's going to have some maintenance on it. Every year we have Rainbow Play Systems come through and do an annual inspection. We want to make sure that, it's safe for the kids, and whatever maintenance it needs, they can complete that for us. So as of right now, it's going to need to be power washed. We're going to restain, redo some of those safety, and then the grab and go bars. We've gotten a quote of $2,300, and so we've gotten that in the works, and we're going to have that done in the next few weeks. So, meeting room marketing. This is another project that the board and Betty and I have been discussing. The board asked that we start looking at how to market the meeting room. And basically needing some pictures to include for the website. We are looking at digital staging, how to do rendering. The pictures below are some examples of some of the things that we've gotten. They're not perfect, but they are a darn good start. Patty and I've done quite a bit of research on this, and it's definitely a difficult thing to find somebody who will digitally stage a venue, a wedding, receptions, meeting type things. It's really common for residential things, but we've had to dig in a little bit further with this one. There are some other options where we can have a photographer come through, and then they have a company that will basically give those photos and video to a company who will do like a walkthrough tour, very similar to what we have on the website for the condos. So that's out there, but for right now, we're going to keep using, the avenues that we have to develop a few more of these pictures and then plug those in on the website so we can start marketing for that. And then we've got to come up with some pricing per day, and hopefully get some more attention to that space.
Jessica, just one note here. We formed this, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. There was a committee that was formed to investigate any options for outside use of this meeting room and other areas, and for marketing. You were on that committee. I was on that committee. Tommy was on that committee, and I don't recall. I believe we had an outside owner that just provided some professional advice. I am proposing right now, and I would request a motion to do so, that we disband that committee. Tommy, I don't mean to kick you to the side, but we've done the kickoff work, and we did get this moving, and we did do the proposals, but now I believe it should be turned over to the folks that have the design and the planning, for event planning skills. So that's my motion. So do we have a motion to disband the original meeting room committee?
So moved.
Chris will motion. Okay, it's the second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to disband the original meeting room committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's official.
Free.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. All right, and then a few other things that are going on property. Wanted to give you guys an update that maintenance is working on that pool deck. We're gonna crack fill and paint the pool prior to the summer months. We'll continue looking at there's some drainage issues which cause some staining right in the middle, but that is not going to be able to be addressed until a full capital project where there's possibly a pool deck coating of some sort put on. But we're going to get it as fresh looking as we can before the summer. The maintenance guys still continue to work on any windows that may have the potential for water intrusion. So any of those that need caulked and painted, they're continuing. We are looking at uniform and mat companies. We've been using UniFirst for maintenance uniforms and the floor mats. We're coming to the end of an agreement if we're maybe not already out of it. So we're comparing a couple different companies and what can be done there for some lower pricing. We've also contacted Premier Pools. They're the ones that have come out multiple times and helped us with, resurfacing the pool, painting, any of the major pool repairs. And so they are coming out or have been out to look at what future items might be done, you know, painting the surface of the pool or even the pool deck, to give us some pricing. There were several complaints, off and on over the last few months throughout, off and on, you know, even after Harvey, about some low water pressure through the building. Maintenance and I did quite a bit of research on this. We initially called the city, you know, had to have the city out and say, hey, what's our pressure from the street? Are we getting what we should have after our backflow? And what are the pressures going up floors 1 through 4? We have jockey pumps that push the water higher than that. So floors 4 through 11 are on a pump system. Overall, we don't have any major issues. We are getting the pressure that we need from the city. Occasionally when that drops, it could be something to the effect of we're filling the pool. A lot of people take in showers in the morning, those kind of things. I would also encourage owners to look at your faucets. A lot of the newer faucets have water restricting aerators on them. And so, you know, basically taking those aerators out, cleaning them, and reinstalling. Sometimes they have mineral buildup on them, but just wanted to bring that to the attention of everybody. We've also, working our way through the property, had some dead palms that were removed. Those were a little bit of a nuisance for the last year. The 21 freeze got them, and we had hopes that some of them would come back, but they did not. Maintenance has rebuilt the irrigation shed under the boardwalk. That houses the tank for the irrigation system. So that's been redone to secure that better. We've had a recent change in janitorial service company. They come through overnight and clean all the common areas. And this was done basically as a relief on housekeeping. Several years ago, we had housekeeping that would maintain those areas, but since the staffing challenges have become more apparent, the board decided to hire, you know, a janitorial service to help that out, and it's definitely made a difference. So right now, the pool lift out of the pool is not functioning. I do have some repair versus replace bids. I'm confirming warranties on those right now, and as soon as I have that info, I'll get that back out to you guys. A couple last items we've got. The elevator maintenance agreement had expired, so Chuck, the guys here, ladies, have been working with ThyssenKrupp and BOGA, who is an elevator consultant. They've been back and forth with, you know, a new agreement. It's been illegal, I think, in both areas. I think there's some follow-up that needs to happen there.
We recently have gotten we've been working with the legal entities because we have another property that are doing that. And so long story short is we're really close to getting that agreement finalized. And so once we do that, then we'll have it updated on behalf of the Seagull and get it circulated. Jessica brought it to our attention in regards to recent inspections.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the inspections that took place, Thyssen had submitted us a repair work order in regards to the ropes. And when Jessica sent that to us, I'm looking at it here, it's about just over $23,000. So long story short, a lot of emails back and forth between us, Thyssen, and with BOCA's assistant, Robert Stroud. They were looking back at documentation. They thought there was some documentation that said this could have been Hurricane Harvey damage. And long story short, it's been confirmed that Thyssen's going to go ahead and they're going to take care of this per the agreement. So that's one thing we do not have to pay for. And the latest update we got in regards to the ropes, and I did confirm when they first brought that up, was, is it dangerous or is it something? Long story short, no, it just needs to be addressed. And like anything else at the time of the update, it was 6 to 8 weeks. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. And then, yes, once we get that agreement finalized, and again, these guys lock you up in these contracts, and it's obviously in their favor. And one of the main things is getting out of these contracts. And so we were very successful at getting the contract that was in favor of an association prior to. And so long story short, we're working to get it uniform for everybody else. And so I think we're getting real close. And so we'll get that to you guys. We have a couple others that are in the same boat.
Chuck, if our agreement has expired, have they just given us an extension on this then?
They're just handling it on a month-to-month basis, and so we got our renewal amount to pay that, and we reached out to them and said, since we're negotiating this agreement, what do we do? And they told us to hold off on paying that. So right now, they're just kind of handling it on a month-to-month basis.
So they are
Because
servicing it. Okay. Okay.
That's correct, and it's basically an understanding that Boca brokered with Thiessen that, you know, we will get there, but the intention was that all of these accounts do want to update these agreements, and Thiessen appeared to be accepting of that, and again, they're working on it. So they accepted almost the agreement. Thiessen accepted almost the agreement in full, but there were about 8 bullet points that they created an addendum for. So far, 3 of those 8 bullet points have been removed, and the goal is to get all of the bullet points removed. But that's kind of where we're working on now to make sure it remains favorable for the association, or at least equally favorable for both parties. So.
Okay.
Yep, and one of the last things I wanted to bring up is the fire system and the fire pump. This has been an ongoing
Discussion,
yeah, for quite a while. Basically, we've got a system that is 40 years old. As Chuck mentioned earlier in the financials, we've put quite a bit of money towards some repairs, deficiencies from last annual inspection. A lot of those deficiencies are fairly minor. I mean, they are wiring devices, that kind of thing. With the corrosive air, a lot of those devices, you know, that air just gets behind devices, and there's just a little wiring issue that they have to chase down to correct. With our recent annual inspection, we've had more deficiencies noted, even including batteries. So management has been in communication with, of course, Johnson Controls in the way of, you know, what do we need to do to repair these items, and then also reached out to Texas Fire Services. Chuck knows a little bit more about this one because they have worked with another property right down the road from us, a neighbor, and they've had some success in getting some issues resolved.
Yeah, his name's Roy Underwood. Casey had found him at another location because we were having some deficiency operation problems, and it's just really hard to. He kind of is the Robert Stroud of the fire systems. And so, long story short, and Mr. Crosby was present. And Jessica, we met with him on March 9th, and he did a walk around, and he is going to be providing us a scope of work and an estimate. And so, once we get that, we'll look it over. You know, the Sandpiper went through after Hurricane Harvey and upgraded their system, and that was anywhere, I think that was around $900,000 to do that. When he was present looking at the Seagull power system, a lot of positive input was when he walked in the backside of the panel, a lot of the infrastructure there looked like it can be used under a modernization process, so that sounded great. He did point out there's a sounder portion of the current system, and he did say that if that was to be compromised, that chances of finding that part now was pretty much obsolete. So in other words, you know, we've been working on a lot of wiring and a lot of other things. And so long story short, as he came in, he looked at it, and he's going to provide us an assessment. I will say that he currently is, you know, he comes well represented. He's doing service right now out at the Naval Air Station, and so he's down here about at least once a week. And so with that said, I don't know if Mr. Crosby, him probably having some input on this may go a lot further than me, but that's the update there.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that he has really close relationships with the fire marshal corpus steel, so.
We have,
Yes, sir.
Casey, Danny, Chuck, we've been earmarking some of our capital reserve for the use of upgrading our fire system. Do we know what the balance is of that? I'm sure not a huge amount yet. We haven't done it, but it'll build.
You did, yes, ma'am. We've been earmarking that on the dedicated reserve, and I failed to go over that in the financial report. So right now, we've got in there, we're allocated for it as of February, just over 31,500.
Okay, good, good. Okay.
So as we get information on that, we'll be sure to update you guys. Hopefully it comes in way less, and and hopefully too, we're going to need to know a little bit more about the processes and timeframes and how to do it. But he did, to Mr. Crosby's point, we were getting notifications of deficiencies, and Roy did talk to Randy Page, the fire marshal, and he does have a very good rapport with him, and so that's always a positive thing. And in regards to where, he did mention this process may go in phases. So we just need some more information in reference to phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. But as we get that information, we'll get it to you. Per his verbal conversation today on the 9th, when he spoke to Randy Page, he did say that Randy Page was very much in favor of the stage process. So I think that may benefit
And that
us.
would be helpful. That would be
Yes.
helpful. Okay.
And because it's the original manufacturers, they can reuse much of the wiring that's already there, as opposed to some of the other options involved a lot of rewiring, a lot more expense in that direction. So that's a positive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Is that it, Jessica, for your property updates? Okay.
Ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. We can move on then to old business, committee updates. And the first item is the Capital Project Committee. That would be Tommy and myself and Mike Watson. Mike is not present to provide an update. So I'm going to ask Tommy if he might go first and provide an update. And then I will certainly fill in any gaps that there might be.
I'd be happy to. So we've been working on this capital project for quite some time. The purpose, the goals of this are to replace the railings is probably the most visual, but a lot of this is visual. It will be resurfacing the walkways, and the soffits are basically the stuccoed areas of the building, which wrap around the faces. I mean, they're in a lot of places. There's a lot of those areas, but a lot of that's peeling off. They're very, very unsightly. The walkways and the balconies, that we have issues that have been pointed out by engineers going back to 2016, that where water is penetrating into those walkways and balconies in some cases, depending on the surfaces. But that water is salt water, and it is potentially degrading the steel, reinforcing steel in the building. We know we do spalling repairs frequently on that, which is because of water infiltration getting to the steel, and it busts and breaks up the concrete. So the advice given some time ago, right before Harvey, and it got put on hold, was that we needed to go through and seal those surfaces and keep the water out. And so that is one of the major purposes of this project from a structural standpoint. So there's a cosmetic aspect to that, but also a structural part of that. The railings, we have a number of areas of the building, and some people may look and say, hey, my railings are fine, why are we doing this? But we have a number of areas of the building that the railings are in very bad condition, including the supports. In fact, mostly the supports that are tying the post to the building itself, to the concrete. They're rusted out, and those it was an angle iron that kind of came up from the slab, and those are rusted out, and some of those railings are obviously deteriorating. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the status is, but they're also substandard as far as code, which is one thing to keep in mind. So the spacing of the spindles is wider than what has been allowed for quite some time. And if you have small children and dogs out there, you probably get a little bit nervous because they seem kind of wide, and that's because they are. So there's a reason there that we're looking at the railings, but mostly it's a safety and a liability issue, and it's those are components. So at this stage, we have identified the contractor. This has been happening for the past year. We have an architect that worked on the scope of the work, put together a team. We identified several contractors to potentially bid. Two of them did, and then we chose to, at least in a preliminary state, go with Victory Construction, and they are right now working on mock-ups, which are basically testing the products that have been identified by architects and engineers as being the best products to put, use on our building for a long-term solution for this. So that is underway right now. We're doing these mock-ups in unit 205 and 305, and if you've been down, you're probably seeing the scaffolding up there. That it's basically, in a sense, we're only doing one level, but the 305 balcony surface is being done, and that wraps around to the 205 ceiling. So we're doing the 205 ceiling and the 305 balcony surface, and then doing the 305 railing. So we're testing these products. It's been very, very good. They've run into some unexpected issues in their demo and even in the railing install. So they're learning, and that's the purpose of the mock-up. We don't have real firm pricing from them on the total project, but that is another aspect, and really important one of doing the mock-ups is they're doing this in a test for their contractors to see what labor is involved, what is involved, so they can give us accurate bids as to what the labor will be and what so that we would be hoping to get this next month. Our goals with the project at this point would be to start in the fall with the major parts of it. We would not be trying to do anything during the summer other than maybe some preliminary work, but overall we'd be trying to start in the August-September timeframe. It could carry on 2 seasons. I've asked them to try to look at it, maybe a possibility of how they could get this done in 1 season. And they are looking at that with them as they're doing the mock-ups as well. So, and I say a season, I mean an off season, basically trying to accomplish most of this between fall and early fall and late spring, so that we can avoid doing it during the summer months. It does require scaffolding on the buildings, and I think one question that I've seen come up that's really important is to understand is, in resurfacing the balconies, resurfacing the soffits underneath part of that popcorn coming up around, that requires having scaffolding up on the building. The railings also require that. It'll be certainly easier doing the railings with that. The other thing is, if we're resurfacing the balcony surfaces and the walkway surfaces, at that time we need to be dealing with the attachments of the railings to those surfaces, because they need to be sealed. All that needs to be addressed at one time. And it really ties these two projects together, where it's a lot more efficient to do both of them at the same time. So, from a timing standpoint, it's a really much better project to do the railings at the same time we're doing these balcony ceilings and balcony and walkway floors. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. We should have some numbers, some really hard numbers in this month, I'm hoping. And we will be coming out with a lot more information. The preliminary cost numbers, which I think we shared at the previous meeting, we're we're expecting somewhere in the probably 6 to 8 million range, dollar wise. So it's a big project, and not one that's comfortable for any of us, but it is one that, from a liability standpoint, the architects, engineers, and myself, and I think all the board members really understand that it's something that we can't not do. We saw what happened with the building in Florida when maintenance was deferred, and we don't need to look on there. Hey, there's a picture. You can see on this picture that they put up on the screen, the surface has been redone. This is a balcony that did not have tile on it. And they've actually got some railings standing there. That's awesome. I have not seen this. So it looked good. That's the soffit is stripped off, so that they've been doing a lot of prep on that. Some of the balconies have a negative slope, water sloping back toward the walls. So that has been an added issue with water penetration. We're also taking care of the 05 leak that has been here since the inception of the building.
Yes, and that's a critical component of this, Tommy.
Yeah, it really is. It's a huge part, because I realize it's only one stack, but it affects everybody from 1105 down to the lobby.
Absolutely.
So those are the railings. We're doing a cable railing system is what we have proposed, and it's going to really enhance the view from inside the unit. In fact, you can see it there. The view obstruction, if you're sitting inside looking out, it's going to be a new world from that standpoint. I think you'll really appreciate it. That's a great picture.
Yeah, it is. I hadn't seen that.
But anyway,
Jessica just provided them to us, and so that's why.
That was as of about 7 o'clock last night. So.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
So this is really, it's going to be a very a big upgrade to the building. Some people were asking, hey, does this does this increase my value? Or all of that's very subjective. I think we have to keep the building up to date, competing with the rest of the island. If we don't, our values are going to decrease proportional to the rest of the island. So these are things we've got to do. This is going to be a little cleaner, a little more up-to-date approach with the cable rails, but most of all, your view. You're going to really love the view when you're sitting in your condos looking out. You'll really appreciate that.
Just one thing I'd like to add, Tommy. For folks that may be listening, also the members of the board here, if they weren't initially involved in some of the late work that we did in putting together this project. But as with the lobby, the meeting room, whatever, we understood our limitations as board members. We knew that we were not designers, engineers, architects, and whatever. So we went to who we felt were the best and had them evaluate and make the proposals for the products and these projects. So this project was, even though we said, we believe we have a concern here with our railings, that things that were visual, things that maintenance pointed out, and often where owners pointed out. So we knew we had an issue there. We knew we had an issue with the walkways because it was pointed out by an engineer in 2016, and we were ready to go with that when Harvey hit. We knew that the 05 areas were a significant issue. We knew all of the ceilings were a significant issue. So it was easy to point out to someone where our concerns were, and then said, in your professional capacity, design a plan for us. And that's what we did. So I would like people to keep in mind that it isn't the board that designed this. We went to a professional that did this. Again, very well qualified, and to engineers that did this. So we're doing it under their direction. And yes, we did evaluate, but only again, evaluate based on recommendations, the products they were proposing. And when it came to, for instance, the railings, we did go back and talk to the engineer and we talked to the architect about the possibility of repairing the existing railings and refinishing those. Their response was that they would never propose that. They felt it was unsafe, a very expensive way to go about this, and it would be an ongoing project. So it was just hands down. They wouldn't discuss it. They wouldn't get involved in it, is really where it ended up. And as far as the choice, there were some directives that we were provided, but they were things like ease of maintenance, attractiveness, something with a long life, a good warranty, also something that would enhance the view of the beach. So we didn't say we wanted this. We just said, this is what we'd like you to go out and find for us. And this is what the recommendation was. So it's important for people to know the background of this, and hopefully that helps in their understanding of the direction that the board has gone. The owners haven't voted on this yet. We don't know where it'll go. We need to have that contract in place. Tommy and I and Mike were on the phone with Jessica. And Jessica, I apologize. I said I would get back to you about this because Jessica was not able to be on the phone call with us that day. She had another very pressing item, probably was a personnel item, which seems to take up all her time. But anyway, we did really encourage them to get this contract together and see if we could possibly have it so we could get it to the owners and get it in place by, say, May 1st. We don't have much time. We're hoping that they're scrambling. They understood the necessity for that too. But again, we're very cognizant of the fact that there's not been a vote on this yet. We're just going to move to a place that we hope we can present it well and folks understand, and they'll give their voice of approval. But again, the owners will speak. Right, Tommy?
No, exactly right. I think it's something we don't really have any choices. And like Nancy is saying, the architects, when we looked at that part, that the ideas of, okay, how can we repair this? We're just treading on some dangerous ice when we start talking about that, because you're talking about railings that are substandard, they're subcode right now. So when you start doing repairs, you really are caught up in what percentage of it are you repairing, things like that, to be able to be grandfathered. And there's some of these railings that, and some of them we've already virtually replaced in order to maintain safety, but we won't be able to replace it. What we replace, we can't replace it with the same spindles at the same distance. So you would look up from the exterior and see a different look on balconies based on spindle spacing being quite a bit different in some other aspects of it in order to meet code. It doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the issue is the supports coming from the floor rusted out, and we're abandoning all those supports with what we're doing. We're going to use a system that bolts down to the floor, that is not trying to tie into the steel. We will seal up all those. So again, we're looking at the long term of this. As we approach it, we really haven't. It's a little out of my cup of tea on this, but there will be financing options offered probably over 5 years. But until we have a firm number, we don't know what to. We don't have something to take to the bank to really get answers on what we will do. But we'll try to make it as comfortable for everybody as possible. It will probably, and we also have money in capital reserves and those assessments. All that'll be kind of looked at, that we're putting in a pretty good chunk every month on two capital reserves right now. So some of that chunk may be able to be backed off, that we're putting in, because we're going to be taking care of all of the spalding through most of that parts of the building as we're doing this. So we've spent millions of dollars, I think, over the past 10 or 12 years on Spalding, I believe is like 2 or 3 million, if I'm correct. And
I think it was over 3 million, Tommy. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
so-
Jessica? I know you pulled the numbers for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so a big numbers that we will be addressing all of these in a much better longer term aspect as we're doing this. And another thing to consider is we look at the whole scope of this. The preliminary numbers that we were given last fall would have the railing at being under 30% of the project. So the actual replacement, the labor and the labor to install the new railing and the cost of the materials was under 30% of the project. So it's important for everybody to understand that that's there's a bigger scope to this project that is, and a lot of it's just the mobilization, the cost to get the scaffolding up. Those are really big numbers, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep those numbers as tight as we can. But the resurfacing of all the refinishing all the surfaces of the building, excluding the brick, is essentially what we're doing. And it's very important, but it's not a simple process.
Very labor intensive. Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully for people that are listening and for all of you, have a little more information, and we just want to have this building be safe and well maintained and attractive. So all three things go. Okay, thanks, Tommy. You always understand this well and provide us with a good overview. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have an HR committee. It's been extremely helpful, the work that they have done, and working with management. So I'm not sure, Michael, are you going to provide an update? Okay.
Yeah, the committee is Patty Goldberg and myself working with Jessica on obviously our primary asset is our people. Without people, we can't run this place. We had a quiet period over the holidays but things have kind of heated up as the year's wearing on. We continue to face a lot of challenges. It's already been described. You go to local restaurants and they're working on short staff and short hours, and gas has gone up and allocation bites us, and et cetera. People not coming back into the workforce. So it's preventing people, obviously, with a lot of options in terms of promotion, salary, et cetera. We've been working with Jessica as much as possible to look at salary structures and be as proactive as possible to head off future problems, because it's always less expensive to fix and look after your own people you've got now that you know, rather than replace them and with people you don't know and retraining it, and et cetera. So we have, however, had some turnover. Jessica pointed that out. We specifically, I know the owners in many cases have relationships with the people they meet and see every day. Just to let people know that the person we lost in the front desk was Caitlin, which was a bad loss. Rudy, we lost from maintenance, who was also extremely helpful guy, etc. But he's moved on to a good opportunity, which he took. And in housekeeping, we lost Cheyenne, etc. We added Erin to the front desk, and we added Roger to the front desk, etc. So Jessica's working hard on replacing these people, etc. But as I said, we are trying to be as proactive as possible, looking at salary structures, etc., keeping budget in mind, obviously. We're also evaluating our benefits package, particularly in the area of paid time off, PTO. Right now, the Seagull has a vacation plan, which, in other words, people have been here 1 year, they get so many days of vacation. They'll be here 2 years, they get so many more days. But it's kind of on a chunky basis. We're trying to make it so that they have monthly accrual from 3 months after they start. And then also adding more days into the pot as well to try and make our package a lot more applicable to competition with the outside, etc. Try and make it as attractive as possible to work here. So we're looking at that, and also some insurance issues. We're looking at that also. Part of the work that we've been doing with Jessica, we hold a dedicated once a month 3-way conversation on all these issues, in addition to a lot of unscheduled ad hoc meetings as well. And it's useful to keep in touch with Jessica because she's a hard job to do. And our job is to obviously give her as much board support as we can to get her through this difficult time. We're also continue to proactively monitor what's happening in the marketplace. I mean, what we had to do last year to fix some problems, the things aren't standing still; they're moving all the time, etc. So we're trying to keep on top of the thing and be as proactive as we possibly can. One thing I didn't mention was that what we are doing in coordination with CCMS is we run an exit interview. Casey's been really helpful by doing exit interviews with people who've left to understand why did you leave the Seagull? You know, what could we have done differently, et cetera, so we can feed that back into the loop and be more proactive going forward from that standpoint. So we're doing what we can anyway to be as proactive, and we have lost some people, we've added some people, etc. But we're doing our best. So if you want to add anything, Patty or Jessica. No,
No, I think we're good. You got it covered.
okay. Well, that's it for the HR committee.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That's y'all are doing a great job in a difficult time.
Yeah, it's hard. I have just one point to make is that Michael talked about changing our plan basically from a vacation plan to a PTO plan. And if we can afford it, because we have to look at the numbers of adding a couple of days. The idea of that was that if it's PTO versus vacation, in reality, we hope what we're offering people is maybe a couple of days that they could use as sick days. Coming off of what's happened with COVID, I think Jessica is very keenly aware that that put people in a difficult place where they were out of work and didn't have income coming in, and maybe just a small amount of something could be helpful, and it might be attractive and keep people with us without hopefully breaking the bank, but we still have numbers to look at. Anyway, thanks you guys for all of your work. Hopefully it helps to keep some of the people there. Okay.
Yeah, one thing just to give kudos to Mike and Patty and really the rest of the board. But if we sit back and look back a year ago, we had major turnover a year ago, and it's unfortunately we've lost 3 staff members, but it's a whole lot better than having lost our whole cleaning staff, and the scrambling we were doing in last spring was pretty crazy. So we're doing a lot better, and still
That's a good point. Yeah,
very competitive environment for keeping employees. So
yeah. I don't think we deserve all the kudos. Jessica works hard on this stuff, and we're just basically supporting her to trying to keep the ship afloat. So, it's a team effort.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. That's what we need. Thank you again. The next item is a COVID update. I'm not sure who's doing that. Casey, are you just telling us if there's any changes at properties, or that's under old business?
I will put it on the screen. I know Jessica and Danny went through, and then there were some modifications that took place, as well as the current protocol references the CDC guidelines in many of the areas, especially with regard to wearing masks, and so that's ever changing as the CDC guidelines change. So essentially, so does your policy. So. Jessica, if you wanted to jump in and highlight some of the modifications
I can do that, yeah.
Your team did.
Basically what we did right there. Of course, this protocol is still posted to the website, and I believe sent to the guests prior to check-in. Basically what we wanted to do was make sure that what is being stated is what's happening on property. Some of the modifications we made, we've started doing supply and basically towel exchange service. We have the carts that about 9 o'clock every morning We go around to the doors. We don't provide maid services, but we do those exchanges. The coffee bar is back open, and some of the other items, I believe, were maintenance. Although we prefer, call us with any issues. It's just the preference of the supervisor of which work orders will be done in the unit. If they're emergency, non-emergency, those type of things, or can they wait until the unit's unoccupied? I think that was about it. There was just very minor changes there. And so if everybody is on board with that, we can get an approval for it and get them posted.
I would hesitate to provide any approval because I have no knowledge in that area. I'm going to have to say I'm going to rely on CCMS. Jessica, if you're in the throes of things, I don't know if other board members feel as I do, but I don't have the expertise to know what are the appropriate guidelines.
Well, Nancy, I think the motion then would probably be for us to delegate that to CCMS and trust their judgment.
Okay. Do we have a motion to delegate that then to CCMS as to approval of what has been dictated here?
Chris moves.
I'll second.
The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
All right.
Thank
We'll
you.
do one last run through on that, and then, if there are any modifications, we'll get it changed up and posted.
So
Thank
the
you.
adjustments that Jessica made were based off of making sure that what's presented lines up with what they're actually doing operationally. So I guess we
Good.
would ask that you look through and see if there are any operational adjustments that you may like to see, and then we would work to adjust this based off of that. For example, previously, a much older version, removed the bedspreads from the rooms, and that's then since been changed and put back. So if going through here you find an operational item that you'd like to potentially see a recommendation for an adjustment, that's what we would ask from you as far as those adjustments.
Yes, and I don't have any problem doing that. It's just that I can't offer any expertise on, what are appropriate guidelines from state and federal level. So I think we're in a good spot then.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then on to new business, the ratification of board action by written consent. All of you have that in front of you. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but I think it accurately reflects what has been sent out since the last board meeting. So I would ask that we have a motion to ratify these approvals by written consent.
Chris moves.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded that we ratify these approvals. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. The next item is the rental program update discussion on rates. I think Casey, probably you have that, right?
Yes, ma'am. So I had circulated, and this information is all in draft format. But we discussed the rate process, and then we also had previously discussed potentially transitioning over to utilizing a variable rate structure, utilizing a software. The software provider is called Beyond Pricing. As we stated, we do have one client, Gulf Shores Condominiums, that put their units on Beyond Pricing in November of 2020. So this past winter, they completed their first year of it, and it was not without effort and learning curves by all means. And it's definitely not a set and forget system. However, it was successful for them. It provided them opportunities to kind of reduce rates in certain areas to fill gaps, and then also increase rates to the optimal level on a unit by unit and a day by day basis to get the maximum revenue for those higher demand timeframes. So I did put some information in the packet for the board. I know there'll be a number of questions and a number of discussions that take place. So as that takes place, just let me know how granular you'd like me to get in this discussion, or if you have any questions. And I try to dig in, and actually I'd like to show you visuals of questions if I'm able to. So
Certainly.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So what I did put in the packet was essentially, and I circulated this a few days ago, was essentially a letter to the board with a lot of content in it. But I did provide some screenshots and for kind of some examples of how the software works. A base rate is created, and then that, depending on the day of the week and the season and any holidays that take place, how that base rate is then adjusted to come up with the current day's rate. And then as the system is put in place, what we did at Gulf Shores and what would be recommended if Siegel chose to move forward was create a base rate for all 2 bedrooms that was standardized, a base rate for all 3 bedrooms that was standardized, and the 1 bedrooms and 4 and 5. And the system's put in place, and then it's monitored through the program, and then the company actually starts making recommendations and adjustments on a unit by unit basis to that base rate based on the performance. And so when we did this through Gulf Shores, and I keep referencing them, that's my only experience of an implementation of the software. The first base rate recommendation changes came within the first week, and it was based off of the actual bookings that were on the books and the demand of the unit. And so very quickly did we see separation of units. Sometimes they were a $5 increment, sometimes they were a $25 increment with the recommendations, but we began to see them kind of separate. And so right now at Gulf Shores, the last time I checked, it was about a $70 difference on the base rate between the 2 ends of the spectrum. I did. These links are older. It's when I previously put it together, but they had showed me when we were going through a demonstration with them, they showed me another client of theirs, and they kind of given me I'd seen the kind of the base rates, and I took screenshots of the links. And so let me see if this will let me show it. Okay, a website. Okay, so let's see what pops up. Hopefully the pictures do. So this was, well, it looks like maybe since last year this unit updated a little bit. So I think this was the lower rate unit, and this was the higher base rate. It was a property that was kind of similar to the properties we manage, as far as it was a rental program all within one building. And so yeah, I'm sorry about that. So it looks like since a couple of weeks ago putting this together, this unit may not be a rental unit at this time. But it was kind of similar to some of the same challenges that Siegel has, where you may have 2 units that are the same size, even on the same floor level, but one unit may be more marketable and may have be more remodeled than another. And so as I looked at those, it was very clear that with the base rates that were set by that company at that time, of those 2 very similar units, I believe there were 2 bedrooms, one was much more marketable than the other, and that was part of the reason why it had kind of higher occupancy. It was booking more often, and that drove it to have a higher base rate. So
Casey, just a couple of questions for you, and maybe it's addressed in what you have provided to the board here. When we met and discussed, there were a couple of issues that you were going to investigate for us where we had questions. One was an issue that Tommy brought up, where if someone occupies his unit and then would like to book in advance for the next year, same period of time and whatever, it appeared to us that by doing so and booking in advance, they would be paying the highest rate because they'd be booking out so far. So you were going to look at that and address that issue and see how we might modify there. I think the other issue was, and you saw this at Gulf Shores, was that there seemed to be, I'm not going to say discrepancies, but some difficulties in pricing well for the winter months, such that you had to make some adjustments. Is that something that you may have addressed in the information you've provided to us?
I think some of it's in there, but with this meeting setting, I'd much prefer to just address the questions on a question answer basis like we're doing right now, versus asking you to just go read the document and try to interpret it yourself. So those are two great questions, and yes. So starting with, I believe it was Tommy's question as far as kind of some of the stuff that we put together, the question was, if you have somebody stay in, let's say 4th of July. They stay 4th of July this year, they love the unit, they want to make sure that they get that same unit for next 4th of July.
Right.
The recommendation by the software company was to program anybody that's booking, and that's what I believe I have on the screen.
That's the percentages.
Decrease, increasing, okay. Was to put an increase, a structured increase for, and these are all placeholder numbers right here. The system, the Seagull is connected, but it is not live. So, but to build increases in for people that are booking a significant amount in advance, because they feel that means that it's in high demand. And so it can be adjusted. The answer to your question is it can be adjusted by policy as customized as you want. There's two philosophies in place. One is, one way of looking at it is this person is booking 365 days in advance because they so strongly want to make sure that they can get that unit for that time frame. So that demand from that individual is very high. And so one methodology is looking at, well, you would increase that amount as a premium to make sure that they were able to book that unit. Another logic and thought process as well, those people that are booking kind of more in advance are wanting to make sure that they get those dates because many times there are longer stays, and longer stays are generally more preferred by the homeowners. And so they would maybe not want to create that increased rate because they wouldn't want to deter that type of booking. So there's multiple ways of looking at it, but ultimately to answer the question, it's a structure and it's a customized portion in the software. So however the board wanted to approach it could be approached in that manner.
I see. Well, I can see now what you're doing. I didn't know what the mechanics were. Well, I think when Tommy asked the question, he didn't know, none of us knew just how you would go about making an adjustment in the software. And I see now you go in and you put in 8% or 0% or whatever. Tommy, does that answer your question? Or
it does. It's and I think that's a good answer, and we just have to think about what we do with those percentages because my concern was not penalizing a customer for being a repeat customer.
Right.
That was kind of the thought process in what I was doing, but yeah, it's and we can logic through that. I like the idea of it. I think that the idea, and Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean it's really to get more rental days for every unit, regardless of even if a unit is not remodeled as recently or is not in as high of demand, then you're basically trying to adjust the price to where you're ensuring that unit is booked, or you're increasing the chances that unit is booked and getting revenue. overall, we're trying to increase the revenue for everybody. And I'm just sharing, I'm kind of speaking, but I'm trying to share the idea of the software, why you would do it. So.
And that's exactly correct, right? So the current rate structure, let's just pick on 2 bedrooms. I own a 2-bedroom, Jessica owns a 2-bedroom. I haven't done anything to my unit really, and Jessica spent a whole bunch of money in the unit. But from a structured program standpoint, the rates have had to be set to where a matter of it's somewhere within the middle to where both of these units could have an opportunity to book, and you wouldn't be catering to one kind of class of unit versus another. What this would do is, instead of having kind of a best chance at a level playing field with the program, you would create individual playing fields for all the units, you being the software. So hopefully that wasn't a muddy explanation of it.
No, I think it's helpful to understand why this may be advantageous. One other question, I mean, we don't want to spend the whole morning, but this does alert, obviously, the owners listening as to what we're looking at, and that's helpful. Gives us something to, by having you walk through this, to understand your document a little more. But the other question I would have for you, Casey, I think we can go offline and you can answer the question about the winter months. But how have you thought through how this might work with our new cancellation policy? Do you see any downsides to that, or do you think that, because we've set that these units have to be paid for 14 days in advance. But then there can be a lot of changes probably in the pricing between when they initially booked and possibly if they'd cancel the reservation and then go back in and look at it. I would assume the rate doesn't change with what they're looking at for their original booking, but if they take the chance to just cancel the reservation within the period of time they have, there is the possibility. Of course, there's also the possibility that there'll be no availability then, that it'll fill up. But do you see that as a detriment or any downside to this?
I really don't, and we have not seen that at Gulf Shores either, and they have obviously they have had a more lenient cancellation policy than what you put in place. So you're being more strict than it previously was. It would be more of a deterrent than it previously was. But the travelers really aren't going to, and they couldn't, right? If I booked your unit, Nancy, I obviously saw what the rate was when I booked it. But after that, for that time frame that I'm looking for, I have no idea what that specific unit's rate is going to be, because it's not, it doesn't show.
Because it shows that it's booked, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
And all the units around you in the area, if they are available, they won't all be at the same rate. And so we haven't seen the price shopping, cancellation, canceled, or ask, how do I get a different rate? And again, many times if the rate is less, than it was, if I'm looking and I see unit 102, and then if I book 102 and 202 is at a less of a rate than what I booked, and those are just random numbers. Many times if it's a lower rate, then that means that it's less in demand, and there's likely a reason for that. And so we really haven't seen unit switching or unit jumping because of the rate process. So.
Okay. Okay. Just one thing.
Your question on winter. I believe Gulf Shores and very specific market, Port Aransas was the first. We were the first property to bring beyond pricing into Port Aransas. And since then, it's my understanding that 3 other properties or property management companies have incorporated beyond pricing. So the full question was, what we saw was, because there's just one rate, right? We set a base rate for the unit, or a base rate is set by the unit, and that base rate adjusts. Set the same base rate for the winter as it is for the summer, and it fluctuates. And I'm gonna do a poor job of explaining that. So let me show, and this obviously is not your property, but it may help explain what I'm about to say. So, now I'm going to show on the screen. Okay, perfect.
Oh, okay.
So this has, this has a base rate. This has a base rate of $350. You'll see it in the black box down below. It says base 350. So I'm looking at April 8th. So then I jump down to June 17th. Same thing. It's a base rate, but the rate is controlled by where it's factoring in as far as seasonality and day of the week and any events that are going on and those adjustments. So what we saw was, as far as that seasonality, where it increased kind of where we needed it to be for summer and where it was able to book effectively for summer. When we got into the winter, especially kind of your December timeframe, it wasn't dropping it to kind of meet the rest of the market. So I believe now with more properties in this very specific market, and I've had multiple meetings with them, and more recently, kind of explained to them we're trying to discuss this with our other clients, and one of the challenges is there has to be a lot of a more aggressive approach as far as the last minute discounts to fill up, and fortunately we've been able to fill up this winter time frame. And they reviewed it. They reviewed their data that they're getting in from their new properties in the market. And in a few days, they had made an adjustment to the seasonality, which brought the kind of winter and early spring rate time frames kind of more in line with where the rest of the market was. So they are actively modifying and making adjustments in the system to kind of correct that for our specific market and the seasonality. But in the event that there are outliers, like I said, it's not a set and forget. And I've talked to some of these property managers that have incorporated it, and they say too, they have to incorporate local knowledge to make sure that, for example, if they have the Easter holiday and they think that Easter holiday, the software has the Easter holiday for an entire week, we know that we don't have that increase in demand for the entire week of it. So there are other days where on a global scale, we kind of set a reduction by a percentage method to help fill those dates. So it's absolutely not a set and forget. It takes effort, but it was successful. So.
Okay. Well, and I guess that tells all of us that moving towards this, that we occasionally are going to have to pull up the units and keep an eye on what's happening with the pricing and come back to you with any questions if we see something that. Okay. Good. Thank you for the responses. The more we get, the more we understand.
We just to share something, we have some friends that are at Gulf Shores, and they were very excited last summer seeing what it was doing to their revenue and such. So,
Good.
and in their case, and they have a nice unit. So I can't speak to all of Gulf Shores, but I know speaking to them, they like the system. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Casey, have you wrapped up?
Yes, that's just kind of my question. If there are other questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Michael, Patty, Chris, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, you have a document. Something else to read through, right? Then we can put the questions. Okay, I believe if our questions are answered, we can review the document that we're ready to move forward with this. So, but we need to all review this. Okay, the next was the emergency preparedness. We talked about this at January's meeting and having a document to take an initial look at this meeting. So who owns that? Chuck, do you own that?
Yeah, I'll start. Excuse me. I hadn't talked in a while, so I had frog in my throat. Yeah, I'll take a shot at this. So in your packet, it starts on page 58. And just to give you kind of a update on how the process took place there. So this was, the document you have in there is currently in place at the Sandpiper. And of course, since Harvey, it's been 34 years since any major catastrophe has really affected the island here. And since we've dealt with Harvey, Hannah, and, dealt with a freeze, COVID, so getting well conditioned for events. And so as events occur, we learn. I mean, for every event that's happened, did we have the proper policies and procedures in place? We had the ones that we were anticipating for. And that's the way the hurricane plans were always structured prior to Harvey. And what we would provide normally is on pages 74 through 88. So with that said, an owner at the Sandpiper, his name's David Maidman, and he's if you look him up, Tommy, don't get mad, he's UT, but he's UT experts, and he's a professor, or was a professor of the Department of Civil, Architectural, Environmental Engineering, and long story short, he's very well knowledgeable in regards to storms. And he had a good ally there that worked with him. Oh, geez, his name was Harry Evans. And so, long story short, the preparedness plan that you have in your packet, this was produced, and it's still a work in progress. Because you look at the introduction part of it, the purpose of the plan is to provide owners of Seagull condominiums with information about severe storm forecasts in the Gulf of Mexico that could impact Seagull. A protocol for securing units in advance of the arrival of the storm, a method for dealing with rental operations during storms, a schedule for resuming operations once the storm is over, and information related to other types of emergencies Seagull condominiums can face, then challenges and solutions Seagull may face after an event. So basically this document, and it's highlighted, and you'll see that it's broken out in sections. So this document's intended for the basis of operations during the 2022. It is anticipated that the plan will further be revised later based on experience during 2022. And so you'll see we start with a communication call. And so when these storms are coming out in the Gulf of Mexico, we produce maps. The software system, you currently have the Streamline account, and there's ways to get communication out to guests and owners. And so as these things are coming through, I check the NOAA site I check it all the time. But then when we look at there and see a storm start coming, there's a way that we can use data, and that is called, and I apologize, I'm looking at my notes that I took this morning. There's maps that we put together, data maps, and so we put these graphs here, and I believe I've sent it to you guys during some of these events. But long story short, I'm looking at it every hour or 2 hours when they update those sites. Once they do that, I go to the NOAA sites, get these coordinates, these maps, and then place them in Google Earth, and then it projects a path. And then as we get through the process, you'll see the communication protocol that's listed here, and then we get in before, during, and after a storm event. And it talks about the procedures that they put in place there. And that we have number one, 120-hour protocol, and it tells us what we do. Notification by CCMS and Seagull General Manager of potential threat to Seagull, defined as being weather event having potential of tropical storm, hurricane approach path within 100 miles of Seagull. Then we have a 96-hour protocol update where the General Manager is responsible for notification shift to the threat of Seagull, and then the General Manager is responsible for providing updates to guests. We have reservations potentially impacted by the storm. This will hopefully reduce calls to the building when trying to assess and implement emergency plans. Then we get what we call the 72 hours, and that's where the General Manager is responsible for an update notification to ownership to a threat, Seagull, and current action steps taken based on proximity of the storm, severity of the storm. The General Manager is responsible for update to guests who have reservations potentially impacted by the storm. Assessment by the Emergency Preparedness Committee of the level of the response needed for this storm. And then 60 hours, you can read that. I don't want to read them all to you guys, but you kind of see the protocol. And the storm, there were several of them last year that kind of, developed that, thank goodness, missed us. We had, the closest one we had was in September of 2021. That was Nicholas. And at one point there, what we, those maps is we'll take Seagull and then we'll project where the closest point of that path of the storm is. And anytime those updates come, that's what I'll do on those, with utilizing those maps. And with that said, I think at one point we were 32 miles, and that's where it was coming up, and it stayed offshore and went north of us. And during this process, there's a certain distance where, each one of these steps fell in line. We would be on the phone. We had several meetings with that emergency committee. It was in morning, it was at night, and we would sit and just basically talk and see what's going on. I mean, between Harry Evans. Do you recall, Casey, what his title was off the top of your head?
Specific title, no, but he was part of the emergency management of Austin. So,
right.
Fire department.
Yeah. So, I mean, these guys come well up. And so the reason why I'm pointing this out is, we went through the process. We're signed up with all the warrants, the National Weather Service here in Corpus, NOAA. We became a part, you signed up to be part of the Weather Ready National Ambassador. We signed up for that on behalf of Sandpiper, and then of course we report our data, and when they report their data, so all the documents, I'm probably not in a very good, efficient way telling y'all about all the stuff that we're providing, these updates that we provided every time the NOAA updated the sites. This group was part of those updates, and long story short, towards the end of hurricane season, Sandpiper won a Weather Ready National Ambassador Award. And that's based on response times and reports based on the Texas Gulf Coast. So it goes all the way to Florida to, South Texas. And with that said, Sandpiper, and I believe there was one other entity in Florida that received the reward on the Gulf Coast. So that was a neat thing. And so this document that you guys, and I apologize, Nancy, we were supposed to have this to you guys at the last meeting, and so we're working on this. It is a work in progress. You can see the time frame for, like I said, we start out with, communication protocol. Then we do the before, during, and after the storm event. The next thing is protocol for securing units, and we go in by step. And again, this is a document that can be amended and drafted accordingly, but you can kind of see the process is on that. It's checklist for items to secure in each unit, additional types of emergencies, about midway down where we talk about tornadoes, floods, wildfires, chemical. I know that Dad had made comments back in the day that when we lived here on the island, a tanker had gone by and they thought there was a chemical deal, and they actually had to vacate. And this was years ago. This was going to be, I think, in the later 80s, early 90s. And then we have a bullet point there with challenges and solutions such as loss of power. You see the loss of internet, we have that still be filled in.
So with telephone and internet, so we did reach out to some specific to satellite phones. Some individuals, those that company where they do a lot of deep sea fishing, and so they had experience with multiple options. So the option they recommended is a device that, and it may be on the screen here.
Yes.
It's a Iridium Go satellite terminal, and so what it is it's basically the satellite terminal, and then you would have an app on your smartphone. So, for example, Siegel would have this, and then Jessica would have an app on her smartphone that would kind of pair to this device, and it would turn her cell phone into a satellite phone via connection from her phone to this device. So that's currently what they're using, and so that would be a potential option for Siegel to have a form of satellite phone.
And for folks, again, let me add here, Casey, last year during the freeze, the internet went down and our new phone system wasn't operable. And that pointed out a deficiency. It's much cheaper, and I think it's a good system, but in the event of an emergency, we would have to have a backup so that we could communicate with owners, they could communicate with the Seagull and whatever. And that's what Casey is talking about here. I think we would like to say that we could use cell phones and that cell phone towers are available, but I would imagine in the event of a hurricane or whatever that they're also not operable. I don't know that, but it's something that needs to be discussed. That's a problem when you don't have a phone system. It's great to save money the rest of the year, but that's a real problem. Chuck, I guess I would, first of all, let me ask you a question. You said that this is the Sandpiper plan. Are they okay with lending that plan to the Seagull? In that we would make any required or requested modifications, but they would lend it to us, basically, if it was their draft?
Yeah, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, this is a benchmark. This is something we would want to utilize, for all of our locations, and we're utilizing it. The city of Corpus was very receptive to it and winning an award, so I don't think there'd be a problem with it. I don't think it's...
No, and it has evolved, and it will continue to evolve.
Okay.
So on these hour benchmarks in the process, those hour benchmarks changed from, and without the process of a storm, those hour marks and what took place made modifications and adjustments, and even when Nicholas came through, the hour marks at some point were irrelevant because it developed much better than what was structured in this document, much like Harvey did. They had to sit around and make decisions, and decisions that were made at that time were actually not in line with the protocol. For example,
Right.
The board was looking at, or the committee was looking at it and thought, well, kind of what we put together, I guess at this point we're going to be shutting down the rental program, and anybody that's in-house still, then we'll have to ask them to leave. And that's where, fortunately, they had the Harry Evans on the phone. He said, look, I hear you. And a plan's always great, but you always have to adapt a plan on what's going on.
Oh,
He says,
absolutely, but
what you
it's a
don't
starting place. It's a document that owners could have in hand too. I'll tell you what, so, it isn't finalized right now. You've given a good overview, Chuck. I would propose that you send this out to the board members and that we scratch through it, make any suggested modifications in the hope that we could call this final to a point that we have a document in hand that'll be a living and breathing document, but that we can call it final in June. That's ahead of hurricane season. I think we need to have something out there, but if you could circulate it, would that work for everyone? I mean, none of us are weather engineers or anything, but we all know what we've been through with both Harvey and this freeze and some of the other things. So I think we can probably add notes that we think are critical. But how does that sound? We've been talking about this a long time, and I'd like to have something in place.
No, we need to move on that.
Yeah.
Casey, can I ask a question real quick on, is anything you're doing, looking at having a backup internet system to provide?
So, talking to an IT professional the other day, they had just installed at their house, which is a very, very rural, kind of out in the country, Starlink, which you're right, the Elon Musk satellite internet, and it just got installed. He had it for a couple of weeks so far. He said he really liked it, and so that's kind of what I'm pursuing right now as far as the backup internet. And so initially, it looks like it's about $700 up front, and then approximately like $110 monthly for the service. Again, not testing it, anything with a satellite. It's going to be somewhat weather dependent, but so far he said he does like it. So
Good.
Yeah, I think that's critical. So long, if it can be tied into the front desk computers and I don't know if it can be tied into where the phone phone system would work, but certainly if you can at least get to the reservation system and operate those things, that would be critical.
Communicate with them.
Don't know if it can power your phone system. I just don't know enough about your phone system. I know it was very unique and a lot of fun back and forth. I don't know that it's just an internet connection that powers it, but I can ask and find out.
What about that new phone system we're doing here?
But there would be potentially options as far as a voice over internet kind of phone service that we can get connected pretty quickly on a temporary basis, or have operable. It would be different kind of phone numbers, but that would be one. As long as you have an internet connection, it should work pretty well through it. So there are options out there.
Danny, could you just add to your notes to add this, both the discussions, the cell phone and the internet, discussions in the event of a storm or whatever type of catastrophe, add that to the agenda for June to circle back.
Yes,
Maybe
ma'am.
make some decisions about it. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Chuck, are you done with this? We can all take a look at it. You've given us an introduction, and we'll attempt to get it finalized, at least finalized the best we can for the Seagull in June. Not that every time there's a weather event, we'll probably modify it and update it, but that's okay. We'll have something in hand. Okay, and again, if you'd even add that to the agenda for June, the finalization of a plan. Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. We have some pre-submitted owner questions, board of directors. I think, Jessica, you had maybe sent some information off to one of the individuals, but you may want to read it through. I'm going to make a point here that we did get some other questions related to this capital project from one of the owners. But I actually spoke to Tommy about it because I felt like we should kind of tag team on this as far as getting responses out, so the responses would be accurate. And I didn't feel like we could put them together fast enough for today's meeting, and that we will reach out subsequent to the meeting and respond to those. So I think you only have one other one, right? And you'll go over that right now. Thank you.
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for the new owners that are listening, I've gotten some late responses on, how to submit questions. About a week prior to the meeting, we will send out an email requesting that you submit those to myself. We'll add them to this list. And of course, at any time, I'm around. If there's ever any questions, email me or call me. But directly for the board, there was one question/comment from Mrs. McDermott. And she says, after Hurricane Harvey, did we raise a management fee in order to help the management company recoup some of their losses? Since then, have we continued to pay higher percentage to the management company? I think the board should review rates and competition in the area. It really hit home when my unit was rented 20 days in February and I still needed to pay fees. We do want to thank all of our board members for your continued commitment and hard work on our behalf, and to Jessica, all the staff, with all the things you take care of, with you all there and take care of things. We have a wonderful, safe, beautiful home away. And Nancy, like you mentioned, I did kind of previously address this with her, but if you'd like to jump in, or I can, Chuck, since it has to do with management fees.
Yeah.
And actually, as you jumped in, the fee is lower. It's not higher than it was. So, and you pointed that out when you went through this. Apparently she wasn't aware of that, but Jessica did reply. And I think she's updated on that now, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So, and I think as far as the pricing, I can kind of feel her pain. We all can if our units were in rental. I think Casey, and providing that introduction to our new method of pricing that we're proposing, this beyond pricing, should provide that for periods like this, January, February, and if the demand increases, you have some nice weather and whatever, hopefully what we would see would be the pricing increase. So the rates would be more appropriate than ones that are just stagnant and set. So I think that the owners that have their units in rental will be very happy with that, and that they'll see some benefits and some increased revenue. Would you agree with that, Casey?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Anything else that you wanted to add, Jessica? Because you did a good job of responding to her and her issues. Very good questions.
Yeah, no, I wanted to, just make sure that everybody understood, and very well written into those financials, the split that, on a rental standpoint, the revenue that's given back to the owners has actually increased since the last management contract. Management actually took a 1% loss where owners, increased 1%. But yeah, the board is always, trying to take those steps forward to make sure that the owners are, well taken care of.
We try.
Yeah, I think that was from 8% to 7%.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's something that it's not the percentage that you see taken out, because a lot of that's going to the paying staff and other things. It's just that their percentage is the 8 to 7. So that's a significant percentage decrease in the fee that was going to them. So.
Right.
And we're doing what we can on, on our end of it, just being mindful of labor costs, supply costs, basically doing some comparisons in the way of, when we're purchasing items. So just keeping all that at the forefront of our minds.
We are. Okay. I think unless anyone else has anything that we have not addressed that they would like to talk about, I think we'll move forward with adjourning the meeting. And as always, Chris has to help me out with this. I'm going to write this down this time. What I'm supposed to do, because I always do this wrong and he always has to correct me. And today I was looking at my notes and I thought I didn't write it down. Anyway,
It's
so okay. I have to move to adjourn the meeting to go into an executive session.
Session to go into executive.
Okay, so could I have a motion then to adjourn the meeting to?
So, I'll move to adjourn the meeting to go into executive session.
And Chris seconds.
Okay. We have a motion that's been made and seconded to adjourn the meeting and then move into an executive session. All in favor?
Aye.